Hello everyone, welcome to my first video for the AQA Combined Science Trilogy or the biology paper. I'm going to go through the biology higher paper, higher tier paper, paper 1. And in this paper I'm going to go through how to answer the questions. I will show you how to make notes and I will go through the marking scheme as well. So let's make a start. So remember, this is the June 2022 paper. So June 2022 paper, the most recent paper that was given. So let's move on to question number 1. Question number 1 is on health and disease. So this question is on this topic. I've highlighted health and disease. Question 1, part 1 is mainly about cells, about bacterial cells and animal cells. So bacteria can cause a variety of diseases in humans. What are two similarities between a bacterial cell and an animal cell? So they're asking for two similarities. You need to tick two boxes. So the possible answers are both have a cell membrane, which is correct. They both do have a cell membrane. Both have a cell wall, which is not correct. Animal cells don't have a cell wall. Bacterial cells do. Both have a nucleus. Animal cells have a nucleus. Bacterial cells don't have a nucleus. Both have cytoplasm, which is again true. Both have plasmids, which is not true because animal cells do not have plasmids. So while you're answering this question, I'm going to make some notes because the question is asking about bacterial and animal cells, and I'm going to make some notes on cells in general. So this is revision. And I'm going to draw the structure of bacterial cell, animal cell, and while we're at it, we'll draw a plant cell as well. And let me show you what notes and how to actually draw these. So here I have drawn an animal cell, bacterial cell, and a plant cell. So in an animal cell, it has cell membrane, cytoplasm, ribosomes, mitochondria, and the nucleus as well. So that is the nucleus in the center. Nucleus in the center. In the bacterial cell, it has a slime coat on the outer, which has a protective function. This is the flagella. Not all bacteria may have it. Flagellum. The plasmid is the circular DNA. Right? It doesn't have a nucleus. It shares similar parts to a plant cell in that they both have a cell wall, a cell membrane, and cytoplasm. And plant cells will have a nucleus, chloroplast. Now, while we are going through this, it might be a good idea to actually try and remember what the functions of each of these parts are. So, remember, in a cell membrane, it controls what goes in and out of a cell. The nucleus is where the DNA is, so that's what controls the main activities of a cell. In an animal cell and in a plant cell, and in a bacterial cell, it is the plasmid, which contains a few genes. The cytoplasm is where most of the chemical reactions take place. Ribosome is where protein synthesis takes place, and mitochondria is where aerobic respiration takes place. Now remember, in cytoplasm, anaerobic respiration also takes place. Chloroplast is where photosynthesis takes place. Flagellum, in some bacteria it helps to move. Not all bacteria will have the flagellum. So let's move on to question 1.2. Salmonella food poisoning is caused by bacteria in food. Give one symptom of salmonella food poisoning. Do not refer to vomiting or diarrhea in your answer. So you shouldn't be referring to vomiting or diarrhea as part of your answer. So what other symptoms are there of salmonella food poisoning? So food poisoning can give you a fever or chills or high temperature, or abdominal cramps. Any of these will give you a mark. Let's move on to the next part of the question. Question 1.3. What is the name of the first antibiotic developed? There's only one of them, which is penicillin. Penicillin was discovered by Alexander Fleming, and it was the first antibiotic that was developed. So, next part of the question. A child with severe bacterial infection was given a course of antibiotics. Figure 1 shows how the concentration of live bacteria in the child's body changed when taking the course of antibiotics. So, let's have a look at the graph. As you can see on the graph in figure 1, the concentration of live bacteria is given in arbitrary units. So the course of antibiotics started at 0. So the graph is starting the day, the time when the antibiotic was given, and for the next 5 days. So as you can see, the line is actually going up to a maximum of about 3.8 and then slowly decreases. So because it's in days, that would be 12 hours. So it reaches a peak at about 18 hours. So let's have a look at what the question is asking us. The concentration of live bacteria in the body continued to increase after starting the course of antibiotics. Suggest one reason why. So they are asking, why does the graph continue to increase? So let's move back to the graph. So here they are asking, why is the concentration of live bacteria increasing even though you've taken a course of antibiotics? So antibiotics is a medicine. So compare it to what would happen when you take paracetamol for a headache. As soon as you take paracetamol, the headache is not going to disappear. It needs time for the paracetamol to go into your digestive system, for it to be dissolved, and then into your bloodstream, into your small intestine, throughout your digestive system, and then for it to be absorbed into your bloodstream. All of this takes time. It's the same thing for the antibiotics as well. So moving back to the question. Right? Suggest one reason why the concentration of live bacteria in the body continued to increase after starting the course of antibiotics. Right? Since it takes time for the antibiotic to reach the bacteria would be the best answer. Question 1.5. After 3 days of taking the antibiotic, the child felt better. There was still bacteria in the child's body. Why did the child feel better? Is it tick one box? Bacteria has become immune to the antibiotic. Now, if the bacteria became immune to the antibiotic, the child is not going to feel better. So that's not correct. The child has become resistant to the bacteria. Now, if the child became resistant to the bacteria, then the child doesn't actually happen. So you don't become resistant to a bacteria. There are fewer toxins in the body than at day 0, which is the correct answer. Since taking the antibiotic would have killed off most of the bacteria. That means it would have also help lower the number of toxins produced, because there's far fewer bacteria now. So eventually the body is going to slowly remove the toxins released by the bacteria. Next question. Question 1.6 suggests why doctors do not give antibiotics to patients with minor infections. It is to reduce developing bacterial resistance to antibiotics. Right? You can say it is to reduce or to prevent resistance to antibiotics by the bacteria. Next question. Figure 2 shows blood viewed using a microscope. So they have given you A, B, C and D. So let's go ahead and label the components of the blood here. So what are these components? Component A is red blood cells, which carries oxygenated blood around the body. White blood cells are responsible. So these look like white blood cells which produce antibodies. Plasma is where you get most of the nutrients dissolved. It carries dissolved nutrients. It also carries carbon dioxide as well. Platelets, which are responsible for making blood clots. So let's have a look at question 1.7. Question 1.7. A vaccine will stimulate the production of antibodies. Which part of the blood in figure 2 produces antibodies? So those would be white blood cells, which was B. 1.8. Which part of the blood in figure 2 starts the clotting process? Clotting is done by platelets, which was D. And that brings us to the end of question 1. So let's have a look at what the marking scheme says, just to verify our answers. Question 1, as you can see, both the options both have a cell membrane and both have a cytoplasm. The bacterial cell, that's a comparison between the bacterial cell and the animal cell. And the symptoms of food poisoning, anyone can be from fever, abdominal cramps or stomach cramps. They also allow high temperatures, sweating, chills, and they explicitly said ignore vomiting, sickness, diarrhea, feeling unwell or ignore rashes. And the first antibiotic produced was penicillin. Question 1.4, the reason for the graph continuing to increase. Only a few bacteria are killed, so live bacteria continue to reproduce, or there's a time delay between antibiotic reaching the bacteria, or time delay between antibiotic could kill the bacteria. So any one of those would be enough. And the answer for 1.5 was there are fewer toxins in the body than at day 0. And question 1.6, why doctors don't give antibiotics for minor infection is to reduce or to prevent resistant strains of bacteria developing, or to prevent antibiotic resistance in bacteria. So let's move on to the next part. As you can see, the answer for question 1.7, which part produces antibiotics, which was B, which we got correct, and which part is responsible for clotting was D, which was the platelets. So let's move on to question number 2. Question number 2 is on cells and the cell cycle. This question is about cell division. So write the biological structures from the box in the correct order of size. So which one is the smallest? That would be the gene. The next smallest is the chromosome, followed by the nucleus, and then the cell. So let's make some notes here. So just a quick note about the structure. A cell, and within the cell you have the nucleus, and within the nucleus you have chromosomes. Remember, in humans you have 23 pairs of chromosomes, or 46 chromosomes, and within each chromosome you get small sections of the chromosome is what is called a gene, which is responsible for a specific characteristic. So feel free to pause the video and make the same notes in your exam paper as well. Moving on to the next part. Figure 3 shows how a fertilized egg cell can produce specialized cells. So you're starting off with a fertilized egg cell which divides by mitosis to produce an embryo. So the main cell division is mitosis here. And through process A, the embryo develops into different cells, into red blood cells, muscle cells, and nerve cells. So let's have a question, look at the question. Name process A. So process A is when the embryo is actually producing these different specialized cells. So the answer would be cell differentiation. Question 2.3. How many cell divisions are needed to form a 16-cell embryo from the original fertilized egg cell? So if I was to go through the process, so if you start with one cell divides into 2, then 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8. Remember, it's doubling every single time, and 8 becomes 16. So you've got the first cell division, second cell division, third, and then the fourth cell division. So the number of cell division it has to go through is 4 cell divisions. Next part of the question. Question 2.4. In humans, a fertilized egg cell contains 23 pairs of chromosomes. So it contains 23 pairs of chromosomes. How many chromosomes will there be in each of the embryo cells? So once the egg is fertilized and it has 23 pairs, which is 46 chromosomes, the embryo cells divide by mitosis. So it will have identical number of chromosomes. So it will be 46, or you could say 23 pairs as well. Either one of them should give you the mark. Question 2.5. Question 2.5. Figure 4 represents a cell cycle for a human embryonic cell. So a human embryonic cell, it's starting off here. It's the start of the cell cycle. Stage 1 is the biggest stage. Stage 2 is mitosis, and stage 3 hasn't been labeled. So let's have a look at the question. Describe one change. So they're only expecting one change to be described, but for the purpose of revision, we might going to look through a couple of them. So describe one change in the cell that occurs during each of the stages of the cell cycle. So it's stage 1 is mainly cell growth. Right? So during cell growth, you could say DNA replicates, or the subcellular structures replicate. Stage 2 is mitosis. This is when the chromosomes are separating out. So the chromosomes are pulled to opposite ends of the cell, or you could say a new nuclei forms. Stage 3 is cytokinesis. This is when the cell membrane separates or divides into two identical cells. Next question. Cell division is important in the growth of multicellular organisms. Question 2.6. Figure 5 shows the mean height of boys and of girls from birth to age 18 years. So let's have a look at the graph. So in the graph, as you can see, the mean height in centimeters is on this side. So the dotted line is for the boys and the solid line is for the girls, and they have given you the age. I've seen this question repeatedly over and over again in AQA. It's quite a common question for them to actually give, because a lot of students struggle to interpret these growth graphs. So let's have a look at what they're actually asking us. Compare the growth of boys with the growth of girls. Use data from figure 5 in your answer. Now this is a 6-mark question. So what I'm going to do is show you the graph. So in the graph, I'm going to annotate parts of the graph so that we can compare the growth of boys to girls. This is what the question is asking. And I'm going to annotate part of the graph, and I'm going to explain to you what we can actually write as an answer. And then once I write the answer, I'll show you what the typical answer should actually look like. So let's annotate the graph. So I would talk about what's happening here right at the start. So that's my first point. Right, as you can see, the dotted line is above the solid line. So the boys are actually starting off at a higher mean height at birth than the girls. Now between this point and this point, where these two lines are actually crossing, right, you can see that the dotted line is, the boys is always taller than the girls at a young age. So between the ages of 0 and 11 years old, this is when the line is crossing. Right, boys are always taller than the girls. They both seem to have the same rate of growth though, because the line actually just follows each other. At about 11 years old, which is here, right, both boys and girls have the same mean height of 140 centimeters. So I would describe that. So this would be 0.2, 0.3, right? And while I'm at it, I would also point this point where the line is crossing again. So at age 14, although after age 11, right, their height actually changes. Both their height actually seem to match around 160 centimeters when they're 14 years old. So that would be my 4th point. Now, what's happening between 11 and 14 years old? Girls have actually now overtaken the boys. Right, so they have a faster rate of growth than the boys. Right, the boys are actually starting to grow faster at around this age, which is about 13 years old. Right, so in terms of a growth sprout, boys are actually starting to grow much faster after they're 13, whereas girls are starting to grow around 11 years old. So they're having a growth sprout well before the boys. Now for the girls, as you can see, after 14, that line seems to go flat, which means that their growth is actually constant. It's not actually changing. Whereas for the boys, boys are still growing. They have a higher rate of growth, and they seem to reach a constant height at around 17 years old. So let's write down all these points, and I'll go through these points once I write this down. So what does a typical answer look like? So I have written about 10 points. Let me walk you through these points. So first point, mean height of boys is greater by about 4 centimeters, which is 64 centimeters to start with, than girls, who are starting off with about 60 centimeters at birth. At age 11, mean height, which is about 140 centimeters, is the same for both boys and girls. And at age 14, the mean height, which is 160 centimeters, is also the same for both boys and girls. Point 4, girls grow at a faster rate after 11 years old. Point 5, both boys and girls rate of growth is similar up to 11 years old. So remember, in the graph, both the lines are following as a similar pattern up to 11 years old. And point 6, girls rate of growth or growth sprout increases after 11 years old, and the girl's height becomes stable after 14 years at 160 centimeters. 8 point, boys growth sprout happens at around 15 years, and the boys continue to grow up to 17 years old. At 18 years old, mean height of boys, which is about 180 centimeters, is about 20 centimeter greater than that of girls, which is 160 centimeters. Now, I have written about 10 points based on the graph. Now, when you are going through it, it will be helpful if you can read the points and actually follow through in the graph what I'm actually trying to explain. These 10 points is more than enough for you to actually get those 6 marks. Let's look at question 2.7. Question 2.7, give one way that cell division by mitosis is important in fully grown animals. Right? Why is mitosis important in fully grown animals? For repair or to replace damaged or let's say damaged cells. So when you have a cut, you will need to heal, so that you will need mitosis for that. So remember, we are not talking about growth, so we are not talking about increasing in height or anything like that. But mitosis also plays an important role in terms of actually you gaining weight and you building muscles if you're bodybuilding and so on. But here we are mainly referring to why is mitosis important in fully grown animals, mainly for growth and to replace damaged cells. That brings us to the end of question 2. Let's have a look at the marking scheme. So question 2.1, the order was gene, chromosome, nucleus, cell, and cell differentiation was process A. Ignore specialization. So they are asking us to ignore if you write cell specialization. And the number of cell divisions has to be 4. Next part. And the number of chromosomes has to be 46, or you could say 23 pairs. And 2.5, the stages. So any one from, you can say cell growth or increase in number of subcellular structures, DNA replicates, chromosome number increases, and in stage 2, one set of chromosome is pulled to each end, or you can say 2 nuclei form. And stage 3, as you can see, they have allowed cytokinesis, or you could say 2 identical cells are formed, or the cytoplasm, as well as the cytoplasm, which we didn't actually mention. And question 2.6, as you can see on the marking guideline, for this is a 6-mark question, to get a level 2 answer, which is going to get you anything between 4 to 6 marks, you need to be scientifically relevant. Features are identified, the ways in which they are similar, different is made clear, and where appropriate, the magnitude of the similarity and difference is noted. So you need to refer to data in the graph. Hence, I used a lot of information from the graph, the numbers and the mean values and the ages. So let's have a look at what they're actually describing as part of the answer. So here, general comparison, boys' height at birth is greater than girls in height. Boys are slightly taller than girls up to age 11. The correct height comparison, example, boys are approximately 4 to 5 centimeter taller than girls up to age 4. Girls and boys are the same height at age 11. Girls are taller than boys between 11 and 14. Girls and boys are the same height at age 14. So I'm not going to go through. I think we've covered most of these points. If you want to read through, just pause the video and have a look through the points. As you can see at the bottom, they have actually compared the rate comparison. So rate of growth is similar up to age 10 to 11. So I've within the answer I've talked about the rate of growth. Girls grow faster than boys between 10 and 14 years, so they have a higher rate of growth. Growth sprout occurs at a younger age in girls, and increased rate of growth in girls is between 10 to 13 or 14, whereas for boys it is between 13, I said 14 to 17. So that should give you those 6 marks. The last part of question number 2 was for repair of tissues or replacement of cells. So allow repair of organs, ignore repair of cells. So I would add the word tissue or replacement of when I said for repair and replacement, I didn't mention whether it was for cells or whether it's for tissue, so I might actually add that as part of the answer. So I actually said to replace damaged cells, right? Rather than cells, I would actually say tissues. That brings us to the end of question 1 and 2 and to the video as well. Now if you like this video, please subscribe, so and I will upload questions 4 and 5 in the next video as soon as possible. I know the exams are coming up, so hopefully this is helpful for you to make some notes for the AQA science. I'll see you soon.